Welcome everyone. In this video I am going to recap the 1998 horror film Disturbing Behavior. On a dark night, a young couple are making out in a car. The boy pulls away, stating he has a big game coming up and needs his fluids. Unwavered, the girl helps him with his pants while from above, Gavin watches with his dog. The police start to pull up when the boy's expression changes from happiness to anger and his eyes flash red. He gives the girl a neck readjustment and calls her a slut. Two police officers approach. One of them reveals the boy's name is Andy and asks him to step out of the car. They begin to talk about football while the other officer notices the girl's body. Andy grabs a gun and shoots him, repeating, "I need my fluids." The surviving officer takes his gun back and tells Andy to leave. Gavin watches shocked and then runs away. The next day, Steve and his sister Lindsay arrive in town by ship. Lindsay is hopeful about starting a new life there. Steve notices a boat floating by but ignores it. When they get off the ship with their parents, a man welcomes them to Cradle Bay. They begin unpacking in their new home. The dad Nathan asks Steve if he's nervous about school, but he isn't. He then finds a picture of his brother Alan. At night, Steve wakes up after a nightmare about him. At school, a student named Dickie arrives late for class. He calls the teacher a peckerhead, and after being insulted by another student, Trent, he starts a fight which gets him sent to the principal. In the cafeteria, Steve meets Gavin and his friend UV. Gavin shows him the different cliques in the school, like the Motorheads, the Geeks, the Skaters, and lastly the Blue Ribbons, who are a community group of good kids that Andy is a part of. He welcomes Steve to the school and leaves. Later at dinner, it's revealed that Alan died and Steve gets mad because his dad doesn't talk about it. Elsewhere, Dickie goes to meet someone for car parts but is ambushed by the Blue Ribbons. In the morning, Steve meets some teachers and the school counselor Dr. Edgar. They try to convince him to join the Blue Ribbons and mention his brother's tragedy but let him leave. A student catches his eye from afar as Gavin shows up and introduces her as his friend Rachel. The three of them agree to go drink beer together. Outside the store, Gavin tries to get someone to buy beer, but they refuse. A Blue Ribbon, Chug, invites Rachel to get yogurt later, but Gavin mocks him and he leaves. Inside the store, Chug stares at Rachel and her body. He starts to see flashes and his eyes turn red. Two boys bump into him and he flies into a rage, throwing them around and beating them. Officer Cox grabs him, but one of the boys insults Chug, who charges and throws him over a counter. He then snaps out of it as everyone watches on. Steve asks the others what would make someone do that. Gavin tells them something sinister is going on, but Rachel doesn't believe him. Gavin takes Steve to the school basement and tells him about what he saw Andy do and how the police did nothing. They meet Mr. Newberry, the janitor, who is mentally ill. He is obsessed with rats and shows them a machine that scares them away. Elsewhere, Dickie, looking completely different, has joined the Blue Ribbons and smashes up his car with them as the other students watch on. Steve heads to the yogurt shop where Trent introduces him to the Blue Ribbons. Gavin arrives and asks to talk to Steve. The Blue Ribbons tell him to leave and surround him, but Steve gets up and leaves with him. Gavin tells him they are all brainwashed and shows them a picture of what they used to be like. The two sneak back into school and listen in on a parent-teacher meeting about the Blue Ribbon program. Gavin sees his parents have signed him up and starts to freak out. He pulls out a gun, refusing to be a Blue Ribbon, but Steve wrestles it from him. As Gavin begs for it back, Steve walks home. In the morning, everyone is shocked to see Gavin, who is dressed smartly and joined the Blue Ribbons. Rachel tries to talk to him, but he blows her off. Steve also attempts to speak to him but is stopped by Trent. The Blue Ribbons empty the room and Steve starts fighting with them, though he is overwhelmed and beaten. Gavin stops them and helps Steve up, but then knees him in the stomach and leaves with the group. Steve talks to Mr. Newberry and finds a Kurt Vonnegut book in his pocket. Steve questions if he is actually mentally ill. Newberry shows he's not and claims people become more interesting when they think you are stupid. When Steve heads home, the Blue Ribbons chase him, but he manages to escape, only to find one of them, Lorna, in his home tutoring his sister. He asks her to leave and she says she will, but wants to use the bathroom first. As she stares at Steven in the mirror, she starts to see flashes and opens her top attempting to come onto him. She kisses him, but her eyes flash red and she keeps repeating, "This is bad," before smashing her face into the mirror. She grabs a glass shard and attacks Steve, knocking him to the ground. However, he throws her off him, causing her to snap out of it. She gets up and says she has a big test tomorrow and leaves. Later, Dr. Edgar is performing surgery on Lorna. It's shown to be an implant that brainwashes students, and when their hormones flare it malfunctions. Rachel heads to the basement to smoke and finds a disc Gavin left her. Chug follows behind and she hides, but he says he knows she's there, so she comes out. Chug asks her out, but she rejects him. He gets angry and tries to SA her, but Mr. Newberry turns on the rat machine, which causes him to freak out in pain, and Rachel escapes. Chug smashes the machine and walks away dazed. Steve and Lindsay walk home when he notices her wearing a blue ribbon and she tells him she received it at school. Just then the blue ribbons drive by, waving at her. Steve then heads to Rachel's house. There, they watch the disc Gavin left. He says he overheard Caldecott talking about Bishop Flats and tells Rachel to look after UV for him. Rachel shows Steve a document revealing Caldecott worked in Bishop Flats, a psychiatric facility practicing mind control, so the two head there to investigate. On the way there, Steve opens up to Rachel, telling her about his brother Alan, who ended himself, and that's why they moved to Cradle Bay. They arrive and sneak into the facility, where they run into various patients. As they hide in a room, a girl is talking to herself, causing other patients to surround the room. Rachel knocks her out, causing the others to leave. They realize the girl is Dr. Caldecott's daughter and run from the building. While they stop for gas, Officer Cox pulls up and questions them about where they've been. He drags Rachel to the police car and punches Steve, putting him in as well, but Mr. Newberry knocks him out and frees the two, telling them to go. They drive to Steve's home to get his sister, but are stopped by his parents and Caldecott, who have signed him up for the program. They try to stop him from leaving, but he punches Caldecott and exits the house. He sees that Rachel has been taken by the blue ribbons. When he asks where she is, Chug knocks him out as Caldecott grabs Lindsay and takes her inside as UV watches from afar. Steve is taken to get brainwashed by the blue ribbons. There he sees Rachel. Doctors drag him into a room, but he struggles and grabs a scalpel. They strap him to a chair and hit him. Dr. Caldecott arrives and Steve taunts him about his daughter as he is being strapped to a machine. Caldecott tells him he lost that battle and starts the machine that flashes images into Steve's eyes. As he is about to be implanted, he cuts his binds just in time and stabs a doctor. He knocks out another and frees Rachel. He carries her through the building, but they run into Chug. The two boys fight in the hallway, but Chug overpowers Steve and starts to choke him with a phone wire. Rachel from behind hits Chug with a pipe. He turns around and she hits him again, ending him. As they exit, Lindsay and UV arrive in a car. All of them drive toward the ferry, but the blue ribbons block the way, forcing them to stop. Caldecott tells them it's over, but at the last minute, Mr. Newberry drives up. Caldecott starts shooting at him but is hit by the car. Mr. Newberry activates multiple machines that cause the blue ribbons to become crazy and chase his car. Steve tells the others to leave and kisses Rachel, then he rides off to catch Mr. Newberry. He finds him at the dam and asks what he's doing. Mr. Newberry tells Steve he can't let them go into the world and reveals he's been shot. He increases the power on the machines, and when the blue ribbons get on his car to attack, he drives off a cliff, ending them all. As Steve watches on, an injured Caldecott approaches him. He says there will always be other towns. They begin to fight and they both struggle for their lives at the cliff edge. As they wrestle on the ground, Steve knocks him over. Caldecott grabs his leg, but Steve kicks him off as he falls to his end. Afterward, Steve drives to the ferry. As it is leaving, he jumps off the edge and lands just in time. He reunites with Rachel and they embrace. She asks what happened and he tells her they're the only ones left. They kiss and go to UV and Lindsay. Elsewhere in a city class, students are introduced to a new student teacher. It's shown Gavin has survived. His eyes flash red as the film ends. If you enjoyed the video, Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.